If you've been watching my channel for even a little while now, then I'm sure that you're all too familiar with fandoms. They're communities surrounding a specific show or thing with both good and bad sides to them. But the thing is, while I'm sure that by now, you're all quite acquainted with the bad sides of fandoms, I've never really gotten the chance to fully address the good sides. So in turn, with the help of everyone who sent me their positive fandom stories, that's exactly what I'll be doing today. Hello everyone, this is the RPG Monger, and over the many years I've been on the internet, I've seen and even inhabited all sorts of fandoms. And while of course there will always be the rotten side of things, fandoms being no exception, I would be lying if I didn't say that bad stuff aside, I've had a lot of fun in fandoms over the years. And don't just take it from me, since with me asking you all for positive fandom stories over a month ago now, you all have definitely delivered. So to start things off, our first story is from a fandom I'm sure you all know about, Hetalia. And in the case of this story, we'll call our protagonist Natalia. Well, at this point in their life, their parents weren't exactly the most present due to the both of them working to keep the family afloat. As a result of this, Natalia was not only lonely, but barely had any real friends at all. Thankfully though, this wouldn't last for much longer, as while she was cosplaying a Hetalia character, she ended up meeting a pretty sizable cosplay group and gained a ton of new friends. All of a sudden, Natalia's life had changed for the better, with that cosplay group really serving as a massive light in her life. The group would take her to massive meetups and even to conventions. The thing is though, since Natalia was still a teenager at the time, transportation to conventions was a tad bit difficult. However, the group was so nice that they'd actually go and send a member to ride the train with her to the convention. Even now, as Natalia's become an adult, she's still friends with a ton of them and probably wouldn't be the person she is today without them. You know, unfortunately, when people think of Hetalia, the vocal minority of bad people within the fandom seems to always come to mind. Though what many people don't realize is that the Hetalia fandom actually did a lot more good than bad overall. And it's not only Hetalia either. Take another fandom where I think it's safe to say a good bunch of people look down on its minority of creeps. The fandom of My Little Pony, where at least in this story, it's pretty clear that there is much more good to the fandom than many think. Take this story I got from someone we'll call Ethan for today. Before Ethan had entered the MLP fandom, he had a pretty bad case of social anxiety, and as time went on, it really didn't show any signs of getting better. That is, until a pretty notable member within the fandom actually reached out to him personally to help him overcome it. The best part is, Ethan even got to thank him in person at a convention. So with that all in mind, now Ethan has been in the fandom for 7 whole years, and after experiencing nothing but positivity, has actually begun applying to hold a panel to help inspire people overcome their social anxiety. I don't know about you guys, but that sounds like a pretty awesome community. Though how about we move away from individual stories for a second, since something many people seem to forget is how powerful fandoms can be when they actually band together for specific causes. Take the Rooster Teeth fandom, where when a member of the fandom lost their entire apartment and most of their belongings to a fire, the entire community got together and raised $36,000 to help her recover. Even the people behind Rooster Teeth themselves pitched in and sent a pretty massive care package. Just looking at how supportive everyone was across the fandom, it's honestly pretty heartwarming. Or how about K-pop, a fandom who's done so much good, I could fill this entire video talking about all the great things they've done and I still couldn't cover everything. So for time's sake, I'll just try to cover the most notable things out there. Firstly, for those who've watched both of my fandom files on K-pop, you'll probably remember how awful the anti-fans could be, right? Well, in actuality, there are whole fan pages dedicated to making harmful members within the community known, and just decreasing the amount of harassment within the fandom in general. Not to mention, when members of the fandom are going through a crisis, these same pages will also get people together to send them support. And aside from those pages, the amount of charity projects made within K-pop fandoms is actually insane. Whether it be to cancer foundations, aiding orphanages, or helping children children with cleft lips get surgery, the fandom's impact for good is immense. And beyond that, even when radio stations do so much as play a couple of K-pop songs, fans of those specific groups will actually send the stations flowers. You really can't get much sweeter than that. Though on the topic of K-pop, I have to include at least one of the positive stories you all sent me because wow, the amount of positive K-pop stories I got was crazy. For this one, we'll call the protagonist Asura. Now, in Asura's case, she had a passion for dancing ever since she was a young child, but for a good while, she didn't really have any motivation to pursue it, let alone develop it at all. Well, that's where K-pop came in, since when she joined the fandom back in 2010, after being exposed to a couple of groups and their dance routines, all of a sudden, she became reinvigorated to better both herself and her skills. So fast forward 8 years to 2018, and as you'd expect, Asura still dances to this day. Solely through the K-pop fandom, Asura managed to get some of her best friends, professional dance mentoring, and even the opportunity to join a dance team who she now competes with. After all of that, it'd be pretty safe to say that Asura's life would be much different if she had never joined the K-pop fandom. However, moving on from that, aside from stories like those, what about experiences with the fandom from the outside? Half of the time, it seems like when dealing with those kinds of stories, it's almost always negative. Well, to show just how great fandoms can be, here's a story from someone we'll call John. So back in 2016, John went to KatsuCon, a decently sized anime convention. Now, John himself wasn't all that into anime, but he had nothing better to do, so when his sister invited him, John thought he may as well go. It all went pretty good at first too, but when John decided to take a bathroom break and had a brief conversation with a few homestucks at the sink, by the time he got out, both his sister and her friends had left. He fortunately found them pretty quickly, but apparently right before he did, one of his sister's friends had just split off at some point and disappeared entirely. And to make matters worse, their phone just happened to be dead too. So of course, like any good friends would, they began looking for them throughout the convention. Well, at some point, John could have swore he saw her and split away from the group to confirm his discovery. Though once he finally got to the floor he saw them on, it happened. Out of seemingly nowhere, a massive sea of people began to abruptly exit the convention, as there had apparently been a fire. Of course, by this point, John not only couldn't reunite with the group he left behind, but he too also had to join the immense crowd and leave the convention. Needless to say, John was stuck in a pretty bad situation. A situation that seemingly only continued to get worse. Because with him now stuck outside in the freezing weather surrounded by a massive crowd of strangers, when he even tried to call his sister, John realized that now his phone had run out of battery too. Now he was really starting to panic. And with many nearby establishments just outright refusing to let the congoers take refuge, he began to panic. Though finally, in a quick turn of luck, John managed to find the same Homestuck cosplayers he'd met earlier in the convention. And seeing the state John was in, with him being on the verge of tears, they were incredibly kind to him and even let John use their phone to call his sister. Afterwards, John was finally able to reunite with them all, and thanks to that small act of kindness, has even started cosplaying himself. It really does show how great the individuals of fandoms can be, rather than the terrible minority that everyone seems to generalize them as. Anyways though, as someone who has been in a fair share of fandoms, I really do have to stress that they can do a lot more good than bad. Of course, the bad is always gonna be there, I think I know that more than anyone, but honestly, that applies with just about any type of community out there. So whether it be from the stories you all sent me or anything else in this video, if you're one of those people still a bit wary about joining a fandom, don't be. In the end, it's all just plain fun, and I wouldn't have it any other way. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, do subscribe, and today's cool thing of the day is Megalo Box. I'm not gonna lie, I never thought I'd see an anime like this ever again, because with it stylized like an anime from the late 90s, it really captures what made those shows so spectacular and even builds on that with such characteristics like its incredible soundtrack, fantastic animation, and really engaging plot. But if you haven't picked this show up, then you're definitely missing out. So that being said, I'm the RPG Monger, and don't forget that each and every one of you are fantastic.